of our parade, Ratchet and Clank!
It's hard to believe that in the first 8 months of the PlayStation 5's lifecycle, we haven't had many hard-hitting exclusives for the console. Aside from Astro's Playroom, developed by Team Asobi, there have been no first-party PS5 exclusives, as every game tied to the console is either being developed by a studio not owned by Sony, or is a cross-gen title. So what does a PS5 exclusive experience look like? Is it an impressive ride that takes full advantage of the hardware? Is it the evolution of a classic franchise, refined and improved upon, thus allowing the IP to evolve? Or is it yet another lackluster game that shows how rare it is to find great launch games? Perhaps it's just as buggy as the platform it launches on. Who can really say? It's been 8 months, and everything we thought would be only on PS5 is now also going to PS4. As the first and only first-party PS5 exclusive we know about at this time, our Lombax and Defect Warbot have a lot of expectations burdening them right now. Can Insomniac deliver, or has their flagship franchise begun showing its wrinkles and bunions? Yeah.
We haven't done anything heroic in years. What if everyone thinks we're washed up? Oh, what if we are washed up?
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen of the internet. My name is Ty with MojoPlays, and this is my review of Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart for the PlayStation 5. Before we begin, we publish new videos all week long, so be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. And if you're curious to see what else I've been playing or want to talk more Ratchet & Clank, be sure to hit me up on Twitter at GhostWriterTyler. Rift Apart takes place sometime after the events of the 2016 reboot. To celebrate Ratchet & Clank's heroic deeds, a parade is thrown in their honor where Clank plans to give his pal a special gift, a device called the Dimensionator, which longtime fans might recognize from the Future Saga. However, the dastardly Dr. Nefarious invades the party, swipes the Dimensionator, and transports the three of them to a world where the universe is under his rule.
Did I do it? Oh, what is this? What's with all the neon?
This results in the duo getting separated, Ratchet being stranded in a metropolis littered with his nemesis's face, and Clank being taken by another Lombax named Rivet. Now they'll have to find a way to repair the dimensions, stop Nefarious, and find their way home. At first, I was wary about Rift Apart's story, as I was not a big fan of how the 2016 reboot approached Ratchet & Clank as characters. The writing, dialogue, and voice acting made it feel like I was playing through a god-awful family-friendly movie. Hey, it was a game based on a movie based on a game. And it just so happened to feature some awesome gameplay. It was missing the edge and wit of the original games, though. Luckily, Insomniac must have heard several fans complain about the approach, because Rift Apart storytelling is completely different. Not only does it have that blend of adult and family-friendly humor, but there are beats in the narrative that don't feel hokey. There's actually character development here, characters struggling to cope with their mistakes and learn from each other.
Okay, so you were being honest.
As I have been saying repeatedly.
Some twists are obviously predictable, but the way Rift Apart goes about its plot makes it entertaining throughout. Those familiar with any of the Ratchet & Clank games will know exactly what they're getting into in terms of gameplay. Really, there hasn't really been a lot of changes. You still have swarms of enemies trying to kill you, and there's that frenetic cycle of switching between weapons and using them as often as possible to get them all leveled up. However, there are a couple of unique mechanics added to give you the advantage in combat. Ratchet and Rivet can pull themselves into rifts, allowing them to instantly transport themselves from one part of the area to the next. This sudden change of position opens up flanking opportunities and helps you maintain control of the fight. You can also utilize what is called the Phantom Dash. It's pretty much a dodge button that can also help you reach farther ledges when not in combat. Of course, the main stars of the Ratchet & Clank games are arguably the weapons. Veterans can expect a handful of weapons from past titles to show up, though there are plenty of newer weapons at your disposal too. Some are mechanically similar to other tools of destruction, such as Mr. Fungi being a somewhat different Mr. Zircon, and the Enforcer basically being the Blitzgun and Shock Cannon. Still, that doesn't make them any less fun to use, especially since the DualSense's capabilities give you a sense of impact when firing. Really, using each weapon feels incredibly satisfying. I only wish the adaptive triggers didn't make my fingers go through an intense workout with their resistance. While we're on the subject of hardware, I'd like to point out that Rift Apart does an excellent job at utilizing the power of the PS5. With worlds loading in at a moment's notice and seamless transitions between cutscenes and gameplay, it's astounding to see console gaming finally reach the level of modern PC gaming. Throughout my time with the game, I tried really damn hard to overload the system. It's a Ratchet Clank tradition after all. Once you unlock all of the weapons, do everything you can to cause the system to slow down, dip in frames, anything. Put your console through the ringer and become a god. Rift Apart was able to handle everything I threw at it. I spawned every ally I could at once, fired off the most visually demanding weapons, including the Rhino 8, swapped weapons like a maniac, and not once did I experience frame dips, stutters, lag, nothing. Everything was able to render in, activate, and perform without a hitch. Though, funny enough, the times where I did encounter problems were during the least chaotic moments of the game. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Rift Apart is a surprisingly buggy game, at least it was during my playthrough. There was a time where I saw a cube beneath Ratchet, was probably an anchor point or something to do with the debug mode. Another where he was missing a limb in a cutscene, a bug that made leaping from walls a bit harrowing, and another where Miss Zircon saw me as an enemy and refused to sell me weapons and upgrades. Granted, these weren't cyberpunk levels of technical problems, but they were still glaring and irksome. I don't expect every game to launch perfectly without any problems, especially this early in the PS5's life cycle. However, this only solidified my belief that the PS5 should have been released at a much later date than it did. Insomniac would have had more time to squish these bugs and learn more about the console's strengths and weaknesses, and thus, it could have been a launch game. Just saying. That isn't to say my time with Rift Apart was completely soiled. As a fan of Ratchet & Clank, I felt that Rift Apart is perhaps the best we've seen of the franchise since A Crack in Time in 2009. For starters, Clank segments are more fun than ever before. For those unfamiliar with the franchise, Clank sections are typically more focused on puzzles and platforming, and Insomniac has managed to incorporate some ingenious concepts with the character, from using transformative gadget bots to recording movements and cloning. This time around, Clank will be repairing dimensional anomalies using a continuous strand of his possible existences. To repair the anomalies, you'll have to switch out orbs and trigger certain switches in order to connect your existences with the other end of the room. While not frequent, these puzzles do get complex and will require some thought. There were a handful of times where I sat down and wondered if I even knew what was happening.
Greetings! Welcome! How did you get in here?
The heads-up display, or HUD, has also gone through a bit of rearranging. Whereas past games have made information as clear as they can possibly be by centering health bars and making stats obvious in their respective corners, Rift Apart clearly wants you to stay immersed in the world as long as possible. Your HUD isn't too small to where you can barely see it, but it's also designed in a way that lets the player focus more on the action. You aren't constantly eyeballing your ammo counter, as you now have a small meter below your reticle that indicates how much ammo you have left. The health system is also communicative in its own subtle way that works really well. Not only will Ratchet and Rivet remark about not feeling great when you approach low health, but the DualSense controller will also vibrate in a way similar to a heartbeat. Given how many shooters rely on obscuring the player's vision with red vignettes and veins, I'm very impressed in how Insomniac managed to incorporate the DualSense's capabilities into their goal of keeping the player's eyes on the action. I know it seems like a very trivial detail to the average player, but this actually matters more to people like me who play a good number of shooters. I hope third-party studios notice what Insomniac has done here and implement these kinds of features into their future products. I'm not saying everything needs to be looking like Rift Apart now, but I hope that most studios start taking note of the minimalism on display and the alternatives used other than slapping numbers everywhere.
Can't anyone print instruction manuals anymore?
If you've been watching the review, I'm going to spare you of the common phrase, that's been said by so many different outlets right now. Yes, Rift Apart looks like a Pixar movie. Are we really that impressed? Are we really that astounded? Yes, the game looks pretty. Yes, the characters have a lot of emotion, a lot of energy and personality in their movements, in how they enunciate and everything. This is Insomniac, for crying out loud. They've done this for years. It's amazing. Yes, it looks great. But can we stop with the comparison to Pixar movies? Last thing I want to point out is the trophy list. Of the Ratchet & Clank games that do have a platinum trophy, this is arguably the easiest. None of the trophies are tied to difficulty, and it is possible to get every trophy within a single playthrough. There are a couple of missable ones that could result in you having to start a second playthrough, but that's really as demanding as it gets. Honestly, it's a disappointing trophy list. There's more focus on finding collectibles, getting a certain number of kills with specific weapons, and of course, story and side missions. Challenge mode is not a requirement for the platinum, unlike the 2016 reboot, which made it a requirement. And if you've played any of the previous games, you'll probably 100% Rift Apart in roughly 15 hours, no more than 20. I managed to do so on Resistance Leader difficulty, which is the second hardest in the game, at an estimated 16 hours. Great to have hit Platinum Trophy number 92, but it would have been nice to have some encouragement to play through challenge mode and maximize the weapons. Overall, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart managed to meet my expectations and surprise me in several ways. Despite being your typical Ratchet & Clank experience, there's enough here to make Rift Apart stand out from other installments and satisfy anyone looking for intense action, a funny and fantastic story, and an experience that only the PS5 can offer. Personally, I think the $70 price tag is kind of steep given some of its bugs and glitches, but hopefully Insomniac has ironed those out by the time you've come across this video. Hey, they've proven that they're tech wizards when it comes to PlayStation hardware, and it certainly shows here in Rift Apart. Folks, thanks for watching. My name is Ty. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to check out some of our other reviews and retro reviews, or whatever else that our editors might be throwing up here. And until the next video, I wish you all a pleasant day.
You think a crushing defeat is all it takes to stop me?
I mean, yes.